We are finally in the year 2000 of my SummerSlam reviews. What's up, everybody? It's Denise Salcedo. Welcome back to another daily SummerSlam review vid. Before we get into SummerSlam 2000, friendly reminder that Blue Chew wants to sponsor your SummerSlam. Give your mamacita the full Latino heat experience with Blue Chew. With Blue Chew, you'll be the Grandmaster Sexy of the bedroom. Your Scotty will be too hottie to handle because Blue Chew is the chewable tablet that helps you have better sex. The first highlight that I want to get to is Eddie Guerrero and Chyna versus Venis and Trish Stratus in an intergender match. So there really wasn't much to say about the match itself, but I primarily want to say that, damn, Eddie Guerrero did so freaking good at truly making you believe that he truly felt that Chyna was the most special woman that he had ever laid eyes on. And of course, the modern day version of this, of what we're seeing, was Dominic Mysterio with Rhea Ripley. And it's so totally different. In fact, just being reminded of how Eddie Guerrero did it, like I can't even compare Dominic and Rhea in comparison to Eddie Guerrero and Chyna back then. It was just totally different. So funny, just a totally different vibe. Obviously, two people that I was a big fan of, so very sad that they're both now gone, but they did phenomenal work and they had such great chemistry when we saw them on screen together. Like I truly believed like that was his mamacita. And Trish Stratus only wrestled very, very briefly in this match because she still wasn't at the point where she could go to the level that we would eventually see her. She definitely improved during her time in WWE as the years went on. All right, so the next highlight, and this is a major highlight because when you think of SummerSlam 2000, you instantly remember this moment. And that, my friends, was Steve Blackman versus Shane McMahon. All right, so this was for the Hardcore Championship, and there's two big moments that people remember in this entire match. And of course, it's the infamous moment where Shane McMahon gets chased up the truss by Steve Blackman, who's going after him with a kendo stick. And we end up seeing him hit him with the kendo stick, and he falls straight back from the very top all the way into the bottom. And then it's followed by Steve Blackman doing an elbow drop from the top as well to Shane McMahon and thus getting the win. But this moment to this day is legitimately one of the craziest WWE moments of all time. I remember when I watched this live because, by the way, I forgot to mention at the top of this video, SummerSlam 2000 is the first SummerSlam that I got to watch live in real time. So that's why it's like totally different, like this era for me, because this is the time where I can now remember what I was thinking about when I was watching these shows. And I remember when I saw Shane McMahon do that, that was the moment that I feel like a lot of us as wrestling fans, we all have certain moments that made us become fans. The moment where we're like, oh my God, anything can happen in pro wrestling history. For everybody, it's different, right? For me, this was one of those moments. When I think of those moments, it's the TLC match from WrestleMania 17. It's a lot of those big high spots moments because, of course, I was a kid, so I was going to mark out for that stuff. And so when I saw Shane McMahon do that, I thought, this is it. Anything can happen in the WWE. And I thought this was the moment. This is the greatest thing ever. And I'm going to be a wrestling fan for life because it's moments like these that make you into a wrestling fan for life. So Shane McMahon doing that spot to this day goes down in WWE history. And speaking of WWE history, I just mentioned TLC. However, I had mentioned the WrestleMania match because I was saving getting to talk about the first ever TLC match. So now that I think about it, this SummerSlam 2000 is really responsible for me sitting here right now because they gave little baby Denise absolutely everything she needed to be entertained. And so here we have the first ever TLC match. Edge and Christian, the Dudley Boys, the Hardy Boys, TLC, WWF tag team titles, and there's a lot in here. Of course, the biggest spots that happened in this match was Jeff doing the swanton onto the table, Bully being thrown onto all four tables, Lita coming out, who at this point, Lita was legitimately my hero. My heroes were Lita and Stephanie McMahon. We'll talk about Stephanie later. But Lita and Stephanie McMahon were my heroes at this time. And so for me to see Lita anytime she got involved in these TLCs was always a real big deal. And so there's a moment, and this is probably the craziest moment, in my opinion, was when Matt Hardy went backwards from the ladder to the outside onto the tables, right in between this tiny space with the barricade and the ring. There's just this tiny amount of space. You see the tables, and Matt goes straight into that. And I recently got to interview Matt Hardy, and I asked him about that moment. And he talked about that and kind of talked about, gave a little bit of the behind the scenes. He talked about how they set that up to make sure that obviously he didn't hit his head on the way down on the barricade, or that he got tangled up in the ropes, or all of that. Like, he talked about the mechanics of how that works. Also, when I saw Lita get speared by Edge, I had never seen at that point anything like that. And I thought, oh my God. First of all, I thought she was really cool because she was in there with the guys. But also, I had never seen something like that where a man speared a woman. And so it's kind of crazy. I thought she was kind of a badass for hanging in there with the dudes, but at the same time I was mad because I'm like, how dare you do this to her? What are you thinking? Like, what the hell, Edge? And so that's kind of my thought process during that time. But of course, this is an iconic matchup that would then lead to more awesome TLC matches, of course. So lots of love to this match. A real big reason as to why I'm sitting here right now. Of course, I still vote the TLC WrestleMania 17 match the better one, but this one, oh, awfully close, man. Awfully close. It's literally neck and neck here. Another highlight that we have to get into is the Stinkface match between the Kat and Terri. I mean, this was essentially erotic wrestling, and I didn't see it with the same eyes back then that I see it with now. And this time I was just watching it, and I was watching the fans watch it because they were like, all eyes focused on this. And this was just very, very erotic. I don't know what to say. Good thing Blue Chew is our sponsor for these videos, because if you're wrestling like that in bed, you might want some Blue Chew, promo code Denise. So one of the things you might have not thought of, but I sure as hell was thinking about it while watching this match, was credit to these girls, first of all, for going out there and doing that. But also, I don't know how they managed to make sure that their like bikinis didn't move a certain direction and expose something that they don't want to, especially when they're getting that physical. So I wonder, like, I'm pretty sure they used to probably tape it down, or who knows. But as a person who has worn plenty of bikinis in my day when I go to the beach, I don't know how. I mean, I get out of the car and I'm like struggling moving things around, So now imagine getting physical in an actual matchup and making sure that you don't have a wardrobe malfunction of any sort. So I don't know. That's something that crossed my mind while I was watching this. But we end up seeing the Kat, Stinkface, Terri, and it's like really erotic. That's it. That's the only word I have to describe this: erotic. And last but not least, we had a triple threat match for the main event for the WWF Championship. And this was The Rock defeating Triple H and Kurt Angle. So this whole storyline, this was one of the storylines that I first got into when I was a kid, because I was all up on it. I mean, Stephanie McMahon was my hero, as I mentioned before, and I was obviously a girl, so these love romance storylines were just going to work on me. Like, it's just kryptonite. I'm going to fall for it. I'm going to be interested. And I remember being so upset because I didn't want Kurt Angle to be with Stephanie McMahon. I didn't want them to be together. And I was kind of stressed out about it. I remember back in the day, and really thinking about it. When he kissed Stephanie McMahon, I was in shock. I remember I had to get ready to go to school the next day, and the whole entire time I just kept thinking to myself, I can't believe Kurt Angle kissed Stephanie McMahon. And that was a storyline that I remember, probably one of the earliest storylines that I remember when I was actually starting to watch wrestling. So that kind of explains the impact that it left on me when I was watching at this time. So the interesting thing that happens here, by the way, is that Triple H pedigrees Kurt Angle, and he gets a concussion during this match. And keep in mind, because of the love story with Stephanie and Kurt Angle and then Triple H and all of that nonsense that was going on, the fight at this point was only between Triple H and Kurt Angle. The Rock hadn't even gone out there. And once Kurt Angle ended up getting that concussion, they finally sent The Rock out there to kind of stall a little bit of time. You see the doctors checking up on Kurt Angle, and eventually he gets stretchered out. But here's the thing, of course, this is the year 2000, not 2024, where we're more aware of concussions. They still had Triple H go after him on the stretcher, and they still kind of found a way to still incorporate Kurt Angle into this match. Eventually, later on in the match, he was gone for several minutes, but he came back. He came back and he finished the story, but he was legitimately did have a concussion, even though he came back and finished this match because Stephanie and storyline begs him to go out there and help out Triple H. Of course, he does not help out Triple H. And so then we continue to get this match here. At one point, we see Triple H accidentally punch Stephanie McMahon. And so Kurt Angle gets him with a sledgehammer shot. Then The Rock takes out Kurt Angle and hits the people's elbow on Triple H. And at one point, he even leaps over Stephanie McMahon's body when he does the people's elbow. It's so freaking funny. And that's essentially how the match ends, with The Rock getting the victory. But I loved it. I loved watching this back. Talk about really, really bringing back so many memories. SummerSlam 2000 brought me back memories of my childhood. So I had a phenomenal time watching this SummerSlam. So, matches rating. Best match, of course, I got to give it to Edge and Christian defeating the Dudley Boys and the Hardy Boys in the TLC match for the WWF Tag Team titles. Worst match, I got to give it to the Right to Censor versus Too Cool. And also, to this day, I still hate that Right to Censor song. It just gives me a headache. MVP, I got to give it to Shane McMahon for that crazy ass iconic spot. And as for the rating, I got to give this a 13 out of 13, primarily because, I mean, the TLC, the Shane McMahon stuff, the main event, those are three things on the show that I really, really loved. And also, they brought back so many memories to me. And I had the best time watching this SummerSlam 2000. It flew by like this. So, yeah, shout out to SummerSlam 2000. One of my faves. Let me know what you guys thought of the show in the comments section below, whether you watched it again or if you still have memories from it from the past, and what were your reactions back then to some of the stuff that we saw here. Also, don't forget to give some love to Blue Chew, and I'll catch you guys on the next episode.